Rotten Tomatoes has put out another good score for another movie, and here I am again, disagreeing. Let's talk about Daddio. A woman taking a cab ride from JFK engages in a conversation with the taxi driver about the important relationships in their lives. The film stars Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn, and was directed by Christy, and this is her directorial debut. Going into Daddio, I did not see the trailer before going into this film. I saw a brief clip with Sean Penn and Dakota Johnson talking in a taxi cab, and that's really all I knew about this film. Now, before I start talking about this film and giving my review, I just want to say that if you really don't want to know too much about this film, probably come back. I am going to be talking a little bit of spoilerish type of plot points in this film, mainly because it's very hard to talk about this film without mentioning certain things in the film. Now, this film, it starts off where you have Dakota Johnson. She is known as Girly. She doesn't have a name in this film. Getting picked up at JFK Airport. She has just got done visiting her sister in Oklahoma, and you have Clark, who is the taxi cab driver who is transporting her from the airport back to her house. Along the way in the car, you have Girly, who is texting this guy, and we see his conversation with her on screen, and he's talking really dirty to her. Obviously, they're in some type of relationship, whether it's sexual, whether boyfriend, girlfriend, we don't know right away, and we later find out that this guy, he is actually married, he has kids, and he is just in an affair with her, and she likes to call him Daddy. We have Clark, who is the taxi cab driver, and he is very flirtatious towards Girly here. He is kind of a creeper, I would say, his character. He talks a lot about sexual power and different things within relationships. We learn about his character and how he's been married before, a couple times at that, and we learn just why his marriage actually failed. And then we learn a little bit more about Dakota Johnson's character and how her mother left her, her father really wasn't there for her, and we learn about certain situations that she's had to go through. The film takes place in one centralized location in this taxi cab, and the cinematography for this was pretty simple. They didn't really have to do too much. There's a couple times we do see the camera outside the car, and we do get to take in a little bit of the city, a few buildings. At one point, they do get stopped because there is a traffic accident, and we do see the accident as they drive by it, but that takes about an hour to really get into that, and then we see them start moving, and then we'll see the camera outside the car a little bit, and it's really just them talking about relationships and lives. It's like one big TED Talk, the entire film, in which at one point it gets really weird where Clark's character is having a monologue about panties and how he wants to go to Japan and get used panties out of a vending machine. There's certain little weird little topics like that where Sean Penn's character is really kind of a creep, and I think he's really weird. I didn't really get into his character all that much, and that's where this film, to me, it really falls flat, because it's one big conversation where I do think there is some interesting points about women and how they date and how affairs between women and men can be a little bit different and what they're actually wanting. Like, for instance, they do bring up where women, they have an affair, and they really are having that affair to be wanted and to be loved, and then it really goes into Dakota Johnson's character, where she really loves the kids of this guy that she's having an affair with, and she wants to be loved as well. And calling this guy Daddy, you can tell that obviously she had daddy issues, in which this is something that's very common in women when they don't have a father figure. They really are looking for acceptance, love. So I think there's good points in that aspect of the film, but there wasn't much else that really drew me into the film. It's very just monotone type dialogue with Dakota Johnson. I've never really cared much for her for an actress. I just feel like every time she's in a role, it's kind of the same kind of tone in which she acts. I don't really feel like she ever goes out of her comfort zone to really give any kind of memorable performance, and I think here there's nothing really memorable that I'm going to remember about this film from her. Sean Penn's character, like I mentioned, he's really creepy here. He's very flirtatious. He's commenting on Girly and making all these flirtatious kind of comments to her. her, and how he's very impressed with her and how she's really well put together. We learn, obviously, with Dakota Johnson's character that she is very smart and she's into coding, and at one point we talk about the coding business and just different things that she really goes through in that coding business. And Sean Penn here, he seems kind of old school. He doesn't like the digital age, he says, and he has a house plant in his taxi cab in which he waters, which we do see. He does make some interesting points about men and relationships. He first talks about affairs and how men, they just want to have an affair to just have sex. Then he also mentions about men being married and how when they're in a relationship and being married, it's an illusion, and how, you know, they want to take care of the kids and want to be this good father and have the wife along, but then they'll have that side piece in which it is just something they shouldn't be doing, obviously, but they're creating this illusion that they are father of the year. And just certain little points like that are interesting, but there's just nothing really where the plot actually goes. It's just one big TED Talk the entire time, and by the time the film actually wraps up and we get to the ending of this film, there is zero payoff. I honestly was expecting the characters to jump out of the cab and say, "Thank you for listening to our TED Talk," because there's no other point to this movie other than just seeing dialogue between two characters in which it's basically a therapy session where Clark is being a counselor and listening to Gurley throughout this entirety of this film. There's also no soundtrack to really liven up the mood or really just set any kind of mood or tone with that music throughout the film, which again, it makes the film kind of feel very dull. Again, you're just watching two characters just strike up a conversation, and that's really all this film really is. So as far as the score for this film, I can only give it a 1 out of 5. I didn't enjoy this film. Yeah, it brought up some interesting points, but there's really not much of a narrative. And again, this is going to be a very niche audience that goes out to watch this film. Actually, this film came out on June 28th on a Friday, and I saw it the following Wednesday, and I was only in the theater with one other person. And the thing is, this film is already out of theaters, so not really anybody knows about this film. Nobody's talking about this film, though I have seen quite a bit of really good reviews. So more power to people that are really liking this film, but this film was not for me whatsoever. I do like one centralized location films, but this one was just not it for me. I'm not really interested in listening to a TED Talk, and that's really all this film really is. So what did you guys think about Daddio? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? And if you haven't checked it out, are you going to check it out if it's in a theater near you? Are you going to check it out when it comes to streaming or VOD? Or are you going to skip it altogether? Have you even heard of it? Leave any and all comments down below, and I will see you guys next time.